Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Thrive in China Roundtable, where we are going to be looking at how to find the right people for your organization in China. To start off with, I thought I would look at the pain points that foreign investors have when having those first hires on board. And a lot of those pain points I've personally gone through myself. So, but it's also things that I've seen through other clients of mine and friends of mine as they started their businesses in China and were hiring these first people that were coming on board. So for me, the pain points are the following. One is a lack of transparency, and I mean this from the company's standpoint. You need to have a very clear understanding of what you are looking for in your first hires. If you are not clear, then you will not be able to find the skill sets that you are looking for. So make sure that not only do you have a solid job description available, but that you have a checklist of exactly what skill sets, characteristics you are looking for in the candidates. A lot of the issues with these first hires is the fact that you don't really know what you want. And you have to be absolutely 100% clear on this. The second issue is a lack of understanding and language capability. I just actually got off the phone with a client of mine who has a general manager sitting in China whose English capabilities are horrendous. It is extremely difficult to understand him. Now, obviously for myself, having been born and raised in Hong Kong, 20 or more odd years in Shanghai, my Chinglish is pretty good. But for most foreigners that are going to be collaborating with and acting as the bridge to the China team, they don't speak Chinglish. So for them, understanding and language capabilities are going to be of vital importance. Otherwise, misunderstanding will continue. And you can't have this. Misunderstanding will halt the business and cause so much other issues along the way. You have to have proper individuals who speak the right languages and are clear in their expressions. The third is a lack of communication. For me, communication is fundamental. We have team meetings every single Monday, and then I'm talking almost every single day with one or two specific individuals within my team in China. It is fundamental that you have this communication there and you're building up a routine around it. You're spending more money on less quality. Now, this is something that is very tricky at the moment because I am finding it very difficult to find skilled laborers. I feel that in the pandemic phase, a lot of millennials have increased their salaries on their own initiative without actually having the experience and the skill set there. So it's a balancing act of paying the right salary amount for what you're actually getting in return from each of these individuals. And the last two is obviously a lack of trust and a lack of loyalty with the individuals. So please make sure that when you are hiring new individuals in China, you are realizing that you can't build trust and loyalty from day one. It is going to have to be earned over time. And they have to prove themselves to you just like you have to prove yourself to them. Okay, so these are sort of the pain points that I'm seeing. And I do want to reflect that a lot of this can be avoided. All right. Now, when you are looking to hire your first hires, the big question is where to start. Okay. And I want to focus a little bit on the legalities of the situation. Do you need to set up a new company to hire people? Do you need to have a joint venture to hire people or a 100% owned company? Who can help you with these legalities? What does the timeline look like between setting up a company and hiring these first individuals? What if we don't have an entity, but we have the right person on the ground? How do we manage that relationship? How do you find the right people? Can existing partners help you? Can you poach people from competitors? what's the overall budget that you want to spend? But before even thinking about the overall budget, you should probably think about what are the current salary guidelines in the market that you are choosing to hire people, right? There will be a difference between hiring somebody in Shanghai versus Chengdu versus Nanjing versus Xi'an, etc. If you're looking to have a GM on the ground and you're looking to localize that position or even place a foreigner in that position, what will be the cost to you? And you know, the last question is really around, are there variable components to a salary package? For example, do you pay commissions? How are bonuses paid? Is it a 12 or 13-month salary? It's really important to understand what are the trends currently in the market. Under the pandemic, I have found that I am kind of selling my company to a lot of people I'm interviewing, because I'm trying to attract talent. And it's sort of a game of, they're not selling themselves to me. I'm selling myself to them to get somebody on board to actually do the work. I wish there was a balancing act where they would also sell themselves to me a little bit more than they are right now. Under pandemic times, there's a fear of people losing their jobs because of redundancy issues, just the economy not going well. There are issues where, on the other side of the coin, there are startups that are going in the market still, and they're looking for the right fit. I was actually telling a client earlier today that I'm feeling like, because of all of these redundancies that are made, obviously companies are making the weakest link in the chain redundant. So it's a pool of not the most skilled people, not the most ethically oriented people, not those that are really motivated and gung-ho about working. It's really kind of the lower level tier of talent, I would like to say, in China, and at the moment that's available. If you're really looking for those skilled people, you're poaching them from competitors, from other companies. You are actually hunting them out, which is making the situation obviously a little bit more difficult. So all of these questions are really vital, because again, you are selling yourself to these candidates. You need to know what your setup is going to look like in China. What does the foundation look like? So that you can again, transparently explain to these candidates, what does your setup in China look like? Do you have an entity? Don't you have an entity? What's your budget? What's your investment capital? These are what they're going to look for. Remember, you might have had 300 years of history somewhere else. In China, you're brand new. And in China, even if you've had 2 years of history, that still makes you a startup. So all the new clients that I'm talking to, in my mind, they're startups. They're brand new. There's no brand recognition, not really. So you're selling yourself to these candidates, right? And you are in a tricky situation because you're a startup, meaning we don't really know if you're going to succeed in China or not, right? So it does cause a bit of hesitancy from candidates to understand, should I take that job or not? There are probably more risks than the stability that I need. So the most important hires, in my opinion, are going to make or break your business. So of course, the key is, how do you spot a good one? And one thing that I've learned in operating in China in the last 20 years is, I believe there are 4 characteristics that you should be looking for as you are interviewing candidates. And I want to go through these 4 characteristics. And I think for me, the 4 characteristics are vital to make sure the staff, you can retain the staff, i.e. they're going to stay with you. They're going to build their vision is to build the business with you, and your vision is to build the business with them, as if you're almost partners in this collaboration. They are the ones who are going to lead the work ethic for the other team members that you are also going to then hire thereafter. So for me, the 4 characteristics that I look for, actually, even today, even as I do have a bigger team, is the fact that I expect people to be generalists. Now, in my business, I'm hiring financial individuals, people who have an accounting certificate, have a CPA license, they have worked for over 15 to 20 years in the finance sector. But my expectation with that experience is that they know so much more. They know about marketing, they know about supply chain, they know about customs, they know about trade, They know about just general management. They know about production, etc. Sales, even. They are generalists. All right. Now, why am I looking for that, especially with the first hires? Because you currently are a one-man show going into China. You need somebody to support your business on the ground. This person will have a speciality and expertise either in marketing or in sales, specific to your industry and sector, or in finance, whatever that might be. But you need them to be flexible enough to do everything. Because you're not going to go into China and say, okay, from day one, I'm going to hire 10, 15, 20 people. Actually, you're going to hire one person who you're going to delegate everything to, meaning they're the coordinator of that entire office. I don't want to give them the title of general manager because they might not have the power of authority to make certain decisions, but they are your go-to person on the ground. And you might have one, you might have two, but definitely at the beginning, you're not going to have more than 5. All right. And you need these people to be flexible enough to do a lot for you. So I call them generalists, and they have to have the attitude that they are willing to be generalists, that they are willing, even if they don't know something, willing to learn and venture into that realm. So I know a lot of accountants who know nothing about marketing, but I still want their insight. I want them to be proactive with me and say, here's a couple of ideas I have in terms of generating more business for the company. Why? Because I'm instilling a philosophy within the organization that the vision is to grow the business, and everybody is involved in that growth and in that vision. All right. So you want somebody who's going to be flexible. If you are interviewing somebody and they say, actually, I'm just a numbers person. I don't know anything, and I'm actually not even willing to learn. Okay. If that's the attitude that they're going to give you, there is no point bringing them on. The second characteristic is no egos. Now, I had a mentor who, my father, who actually said, if you knew what it took to start a company, you'd never do it. Building a company is hard. And building a company in a foreign jurisdiction like China, where perhaps you don't necessarily have the Chinese language capabilities, it is even harder. So there's no room within your organization for people to now have egos, both literally and figuratively, okay? You don't want somebody to be the arrogant one, who knows best, who does this, and if you don't follow what they do, then they start having a bad attitude. There is no time, actually, there's no time for egos and to deal with this, okay? You are building up a business where everybody's feet has to be on the ground, and hard work is going to lead you to success, okay? And I say this in a lot of my presentations. It is impossible for one person to know everything about how to run a business in China, okay? You need a team that has to admit what their strengths are and has to admit what their weaknesses and failures are, okay? There is no room for egos. The third characteristic is that they have to be believers. Now, like I said, you're going into China. I don't care about the history you've had in other jurisdictions. I don't care if you are a century-old organization, all right? In China, you are new, which means, in my mind, you are a startup, which means that you need people to come on board who believe in the vision and the strategy that you have for the market. If you have people, if you don't share that vision or you don't share that strategy, how do you expect the candidates to work with you to grow the business? Now, a lot of this, you might say, well, we don't want to release so much IP or information, especially if we're poaching people and they're working for competitors. I get that. It's a fine balancing act. But you certainly need somebody who is going to believe in what you're doing and how you're planning on growing. Like I said, you are marketing yourself and your company to them to attract them to come and work for you. So you got to share something with them. And again, it's a balancing act of how much you're willing to share. But you need people who believe in your vision and are motivated to come every day to build this business with you. And last but not least, you need grit and perseverance and patience. All right. I find nowadays that a lot of the millennials don't have grit. They're like, if something doesn't work, I couldn't care less. I'm going to forget about it. It drives me insane. Okay. You need to persevere in China. Okay. If something fails, figure out a solution, get around it. Don't just stop and say, can't do it. Right. There's always a solution in China. And you, again, need people on the ground who are going to say, all right, we've hit a roadblock, but you know what? I've got 2 ideas now. All right. They're willing to persevere. And it is a daily job. All right. I was a competitive swimmer back in the day. I swam for Hong Kong. I was a national athlete. And, you know, to be a national athlete, you have to have grit and perseverance. Okay. Just because there's one competition where I failed poorly at it, it doesn't mean I'm going to now quit swimming and say, forget it. No, I love it. I love what I do. I had a bad day. I'm going to get up the next day, practice even harder, and make sure I reach the targets and goals I'm reaching. So again, in order to have the grit and perseverance, you've also got to make sure that these believers understand your vision, that they can get up every morning and are ready to persevere and, you know, go around these roadblocks and obstacles. So for me, those are really the 4 key characteristics that you will need in your first employees in China. As the saying goes, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. All right. You got to work harder. You got to work smarter. And every day it will be a fight. All right. So how to find the right talent. Now, I actually had a really long discussion about this with a client this morning. I think, first of all, you can do it by yourself. Okay. So you can go out there and use a variety of different platforms to find individuals. You can use job search portals, 51 Job, China HR, Zhaopin, China Job, etc. You can use LinkedIn, which a lot of people aren't aware that they can use. I use it, especially for mid to senior management roles. You can use social media platforms like WeChat, getting connected to a variety of people and seeing whether they can refer you to somebody who might be interested. And obviously, the one that costs the most is if you then use recruiters and headhunters who actually physically go out there and coach. Now, I was talking today with a client because under the pandemic and in current circumstances, it seems to be really hard to find good, skilled, low to mid management employees who are willing to have the grit and perseverance, who are believers and want, you know, are loyal and want to stay with an organization. And most importantly, that have the skill set that you're looking for, but don't cost an arm and a leg. It's really not easy right now, guys. So you can go out to one of these job search portals. One of the downsides of these portals is the fact that you need an entity in China. You need a business license to actually subscribe to these portals. So you might want to outsource that to somebody who might have a subscription to these portals that you can use their platform to find people. Alternatively, LinkedIn, or really networking and connecting with people on WeChat and saying what you're looking for. I am finding, and I'm not using recruiters and headhunters mainly because of the budget restrictions that it causes. But if you do have space within your budget, my suggestion is to use recruiters and headhunters because they really do have a valid, up-to-date database of candidates that are looking for jobs in all types of roles. And they are the ones who are really filtering. Finding the right people is labor intensive. It is not something that you can just do in a day and expect to have 20 interviews for next week. It is so labor intensive because you don't get feedback from candidates. They don't respond to your emails. Or you think the resume is great, but actually you have a 15-minute call, which ends up being an hour-long call, and they're rubbish. It is extremely, extremely labor intensive. So to cut out that intensity, outsourcing to recruiters and headhunters is something that I would always advise. But even before you start using recruiters and headhunters, there's still a lot of homework for you to do to understand what the job market looks like and what you need to do to be able to speed up this whole process, okay? The first thing I'm going to say is Do your homework. Study salary guidelines. Now, you don't have to pay for salary guidelines. You go to google.com or bing.cn, you type in salary guidelines for Q4 2022, and you will have a minimum of 5 headhunting companies offering free salary guidelines for China to you. Now, these salary guidelines are predominantly made on questionnaires and studies they've done in the tier 1 cities. So we're talking about Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, a couple of the tier 2 cities. So do expect that when you look at these salary guidelines, they are going to be higher because it's the average of those regions. If you're obviously planning on hiring somebody in a tier 2, tier 3 city, then you can expect that it's a good 5% less here and there. I would expect that. Okay. Get those salary guidelines. Understand what are actually the titles of roles. They will differ from the rest. Understand the balance between work experience and salary levels. And do not get shocked when you see that salary levels are increasing in China. This is not a cheap market anymore for salaries, particularly in the tier 1 cities. Okay. And then obviously look at educational levels as well. The roles and the titles is a guideline for you to understand how would you name somebody when they're within your organization, right? But what is so important is to write the roles, responsibilities, and skill set that you need, plus language capabilities. I mean, there's a whole list that you have to create for yourself. What's the role? What are they going to be doing? And add in there the flexibility that you need them to do. Responsibility. Bullet points. What are they going to be doing? And add in there the stuff that isn't going to be part of their expertise, but that they'll have to learn, because that's an expectation. Understand the skill set. What education level? What licenses might they have to have? Mine is they have to have a CPA license. What level of education should they have? The fourth is what skill sets do they need? i.e., do they have to have experience in software? What specific software? You know, and if they're in supply chain, do they have to have some technical knowledge on Six Sigma or other aspects? You've got to look at what skill sets do you really need and want from them, right? If they're in engineering, are they mechanical engineers, electrical engineers? Are they both? What do you need actually from them? Language capabilities. Should they provide you with their certificate of their English language capabilities? You got to know what your skill set is, okay? And what I want you also to do is say, all right, how am I going to test all of this? Testing is fundamental, okay? You want to test their language capabilities, both written and spoken. You may want to give them some tests on softwares, or, I mean, I had one client who wanted senior accountants to do an SAP test. Do they really know how SAP works? Or do you want them to do some technical tests to know their level of engineering and what they're, because that's what they're going to be doing. Testing is fundamental and critical, because this will help you to truly understand the level of skill set that they have, and is that what you are looking for? You don't have time with these first hires to train. Okay, so either you provide them with an outsourced training solution, or you hire somebody who is already trained and has that skill set. Because when you're starting up in China, the focus cannot be on training. It has to be on physically doing the job and being flexible to do multiple jobs. All right. One thing that I will say again is, you, by doing all of this homework, by creating these sheets, by understanding what tests you want to deliver, it means that you can actually do this yourself. But like I said, it is labor intensive. So do you have the time resources available to do that? If not, do you have the financial resources to then use a headhunter to create a solution for you where you don't have to do the majority of this work? Now, how to pick actually the right talent once you start receiving resumes. So resumes are provided by candidates. I would always take resumes with a pinch of salt. You want to verify all of the content that is in that resume. And with certain key personnel, you may even want to do background checks that they are telling the truth. I would not do this for the first 20 people you're interviewing. You may want to do a background check on the last 2 to 3 candidates, just again to verify that everything they have said is true. Do not feel shy to ask for supporting documentation. Ask for payroll slips. Ask for bonus slips. Ask for certificates and licenses. Ask for university degrees. Ask for all of this information so that you can also do your own background check on that. Now, it could very well be that the candidate, you're poaching the candidate, so you can't get a reference from their current employer. Does not mean you can't get references from their previous employers. Okay? Of course, this is labor intensive. You got to pick up the phone and call the previous employers and say, I'm calling for a reference check on X, Y, and Z. I would love to understand their, I don't know, their attitude, their aptitude, their all of this type of stuff. Okay? Don't be shy, be brash, be harsh, and ask what you need. Okay? You don't have time as a startup to dilly-daddle with these new employees. All right? The last thing that you need is to spend more than 50% of your time on HR issues. All right? You need people who are confident, willing to give you the information, and are serious about the job. Now, candidates must be screened for aptitude, attitude, and language. Okay, like I said, be prepared to create tests for them to do. Okay, aptitude is in relation to skill set. Attitude is in relation to those 4 characteristics I mentioned earlier, right? Generalists, do they have an ego? Can they share your vision? And the last one was grit. Will they persevere, right? Do they have the confidence to move forward? So some questions just that I've listed here to test for this. And you don't have to use these questions, but these are sort of questions that I have created that helps me to understand a little bit on their attitude, which is how big was the team you worked last time? What were the difficulties you had to face? How did you manage them? What characteristics, pardon my language, pissed you off, didn't piss you off, right? What do you need in a team member to actually help you? Because remember, these individuals are your first hires. They're going to help you build the next round of team members, right? Who are going to be under them because you're going to start building this hierarchy, right? What is your ideal operations team look like, right? This is for an operations manager. If problems arise, how do you solve them? How do you react? Do you go to daddy to ask for help, or are you a problem solver yourself, right? What skill set do you possess to be successful? Describe your management style. What's your philosophy? If you had to fire people, did you do it or did you delegate that to HR? Did you train people? Did you coach people? Or is your philosophy that you need a team of people that are already qualified? And if you do, how do you qualify them? What tests do you use to qualify your team members? What's your job on a day-to-day basis? I love that question. Gives me quite a lot of insight as to whether they're playing on their WeChat or actually working. And how do you make decisions about other departments within the team? How do you collaborate with other departments within the team? Which departments are weak? Which departments are successful? Why are they weak? Why are they successful? Right? I love these types of questions. And for me, actually, what I do with every single staff member, especially from mid to senior management, and when they have specific roles set for them, I ask them to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. And this PowerPoint presentation is an action plan of what they would do, what would they need, and what would they do within the first 3 to 6 months of coming on board within the company. All right. Now you've got to give them a 1-week time frame to prepare this project. It has to be in PowerPoint, set it, what they have to do. But it gives tremendous insight to their thought processes, whether they think out of the box or not. It also gives you insight as to what they believe they will need to do the job and what actions they will actually take within the first 3 to 6 months, i.e., have they done this before? Do they know what they're talking about? And most importantly, it gives you market research. Will you get ideas from them? All right. You may not hire the 3 people you asked to do this project, but it might give you ideas from the other 2 that you don't hire as to what certain action plans can and should be. So it gives you also great market insight. Now, let's fast forward. You have 6 great candidates, okay? You've watched the video interviews. You have done video interviews yourself. And I say video interviews because at the moment, nobody's flying over to China to do one-to-one face-to-face interviews. And now you have decided on the top 2 candidates. How do you choose those 2 top candidates? Okay, and I wanted to go a little bit through a cultural thing that you have to think about when analyzing these 2 candidates. Okay, so the first is, let me just put all the items there so you can see it. The first is looking at their personal life. Don't underestimate personal life. Where does his or her family live? How old are his or her children? Where do his parents live? Who's looking after his parents? And don't forget to ask these questions about the wife or vice versa, right? You have to understand what responsibilities do they have actually in their personal life? And do they already have a lot on their plate? The second thing you should look at is how well does this person fit into our culture? You are thinking about your Western culture. Are they easily adaptable and flexible enough to fit into your culture? And maybe, you know, you might need other people to do this interview process along the way to help you evaluate about this cultural fit. You may need somebody, your CFO in headquarters. You may need your head of marketing in your headquarters, finance, to interview these people to understand if there's the right cultural fit there. Competence, okay? This is where I would definitely recommend looking at references. What is their GM experience? What's their sales management experience? What is their finance experience, marketing experience? Look at the different departments that you need to build up and understand what level of experience they have. Remember, you should know what is of highest priority for you. The biggest question you should be asking is, are they ready for the job at day 1? Or is there still a lot that they're going to learn? They have to learn before they can actually perform. And you will gain a lot of insight on that question when they do the project for you as to what do they need and what actions are they going to take. You will learn a lot about their competence level through that type of a project. All right. And then obviously, last but not least, it's salary and factors of motivation. What is their salary range? Is it within the salary guidelines that you've viewed based on the experience and competencies and responsibilities? What motivates them? What makes them wake up in the morning? I love that question. What makes you get up in the morning? What makes you want to come to work every day, right? And what are they passionate about? And please don't forget that these are people as well. They are passionate about something. They have hobbies about something, okay? But what are they passionate about? Are they passionate about building up a startup and doing that for the next 10, 15 years? Or are they really they just want to go to work and leave by 6 and that's all they care about, okay? Because their passion is actually football and they play every day. Maybe, but you've got to ask these questions. Now, obviously, salary ranges for GM roles, especially sales GM roles, will be quite high. It can be anywhere between 100 to 200,000 euro just gross salary. This does not count allowances, okay? And obviously, if you live in certain cities like Shanghai, that's going to be much more expensive than if it's in Shenyang or Chongqing, for example, okay? You can always find people who cost less, but again, do check if they have the right experience, because your goal is to get the business off the ground very fast. So I reiterate, China is no longer a cheap salary location. When you look at these salary guidelines, they are going to be high. So you have to really evaluate the experience of the individual and what can they bring to the table, which is why, again, I repeat, the project I highlighted for them to do will tell you how serious they are, how passionate they are about doing this job, and what can they bring to the table. Now, tips on how to choose the final candidate. Again, this comes down really to your own homework. But what I would recommend is this. Always think about your key objectives for the next 3 years. What do you want to accomplish in the next 3 years in China? Do you have a checklist? Do you also have milestones that need to be achieved? What is that checklist? What are those milestones? And can that person do that? And does their action plan kind of fit into that checklist that you created? In this example, we've said that there are 2 final candidates that you like. My recommendation would be go into final negotiations with both candidates. Why? Because a lot of the time you will find candidates change their minds at the last minute and start asking for certain extras. You always want to have a backup. And if you can, have 3. Here I've used this example of 2. My recommendation would be go to final negotiations with the 3 candidates. And at the end of the day, do a cost benefit ratio. All right, in terms of who will fit for you. It's kind of a SWOT analysis, looking at their strengths and weaknesses and understanding how they're going to fit into your organization. Now, a timeline for a recruitment project can absolutely vary, but I've used this as an example. All right, if you've started a recruitment project in October 2022 and you get 6 high-profile resumes by November 2022, you do the first round of interviews in December. You might want to do a second round of interviews in Jan. In the past, you would either fly into China or fly them out to your head office to meet with top management. Now, obviously, that's not being done with border restrictions, quarantine controls, and also very simply the cost of flight tickets at the moment. But you can say interviews for round 3 would be done in February after Chinese New Year. You're hoping to then negotiate with all 3 candidates, right? Till the end. They sign a contract in February. They'll have to go give a minimum of a 30 days notice period. So they would start really realistically by 1st of April, 2023. So it is a long process, guys. It's 6 months. Okay. And this is for any role, whether you're thinking about low management, mid management, senior management, GM type roles. Okay. It is difficult right now. All right. Now I want to finish off today again by highlighting something that's important. You are a startup in China. You might not be physically relocating to China. You're hiring somebody who is going to be your first hire on the ground. Please, the work does not just stop after recruiting somebody and putting them on your payroll. No, that's actually when the work starts now. It's helping your new employees settle in. Remember, they are far away from you. They have to succeed. I don't know, in order to minimize your labor-intensive work of finding somebody, which took 6 months, you want them to pass probation. So you don't want to go through that mess all over again, okay? You want them to succeed. So you've got to help them to settle into the company, all right? Make sure that the tools, the software, everything is readily available for them to be able to kick off. Create communication guidelines. How many calls in a week are you going to have with them? What is the checklist? Verify that checklist with them. Do they have ideas about that checklist? Okay. It normally takes a candidate 6 months, if not more, to settle into a role. Okay. There are surveys and statistics done about this. And probations will be much less than that. So you've got to make sure that there is training in terms of company training, company philosophy, meeting all the management back home in Zoom calls or team meetings, creating guidelines, operational guidelines, system processes. You have to be able to support all of this, okay? You might think that the biggest challenge was hiring the first hires. The biggest challenge is keeping them and retaining them and making them happy and making sure that you're happy as well. You actually need somebody in the middle who is holding this bridge up as these people are acclimatizing to the new company environment, okay? So the conclusion really for today is Set very clear, very realistic goals of where you need to be in the next 3 to 5 years and act on them. All right. Make sure you've done your homework, understanding very clearly, transparently who and what you are looking for in individuals. Okay. You have to have goals that you can then pass on to that team to keep the fluctuation low and the motivation high. Very clear strategy, and somebody has to build this bridge between China and HQ to make sure that there are great operating procedures. I was talking to a German client of mine the other day, who I said to, how would you have done things differently when your accounting and transactional business started? And he said, I would have involved HQ much faster. He said, I learned the expectations of HQ too late. Big thing, right? HQ did not even reveal their expectations to this person on the ground. And this person on the ground felt like it was his job to find out what the expectations of HQ was. And I don't just mean it in KPI and targets. I mean it from a finance perspective. What's the HQ finance team's expectation on China? What is the HQ's marketing team's expectation on China? What is the HQ's supply team expectation on China? All the various departments do not have a unified expectation. Sometimes you don't always think, you think HQ will have one expectation, which is high goals, but you got to delve deeper into that and go into the nitty-gritty details of every single department's expectations. And then China needs to reveal what their expectations are from HQ. And this is again where you need somebody who's got grit, perseverance, and is willing to fight the HQ based on their expectations of them. Whether it's to do with communication, whether it's to do with documents that are required, corporate governance, whatever else. Okay. One thing I will highlight is that when you start a recruitment process, finish it. Don't dilly-daddle. That will only bring a poor image to your name. And be respective of timelines. If you prolong the recruitment phase, this only leaves a bad taste in candidates' mouth. And this is where, by word of mouth in your industry, potentially, people would talk badly about you, that there's no certainty and clarity over what you're looking for and what you want. So make sure that you are thinking very carefully about this. Now, for those of you that are thinking about market entry in 2023, and you're looking to have people on the ground that are supporting your business in 2023, please reflect back on that timeline I provided. If you're looking for candidates now, you need to start your homework and start the recruitment process now. A fantastic quote to finish off today from Warren Buffett. No matter how great the talents or efforts, some things just take time. And this was particularly true in China. As he says, you can't produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. You produce a baby by getting 1 woman pregnant and working for 9 months. Nothing will happen overnight. Everybody makes the assumption that China is a miracle market and you can be successful overnight. That is not the reality. It takes time. It takes a hell of a lot of work, a hell of a lot of grit and perseverance. And you need a team of people that are willing to be flexible enough initially to help and support that business. So again, unfortunately, I don't give miracle guidelines as to how to find your first hires. It is pretty much common sense, but I hope the biggest takeaway that people have from today's session is the amount of homework you have to do to have clarity and understanding over what you're actually looking for. One thing that I spoke with my client this morning about is I said, is your Chinese website up and running? Or do you have a place where people can find you to know that you really exist? And they didn't have that up and running. And I said, potentially you're not getting resumes and candidate listings because you are nowhere to be found in China. So remember, the candidates will also do background checks on you, okay? Do you have a website in China? Where do you stand in China? Are you already selling in China? Do you have a history in China? They will want to know if there's a little bit of a foundation there. If you really are a complete entrepreneur with nothing already developed, oh, that's going to be really, really tricky to have something in place. So again, do your homework in regards to thinking about how you're going to attract this talent. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can always have conversations with headhunters and recruiters out there. The first conversation is always free of charge, and they will give you insight over how you should be promoting your business to attract candidates as well. So if you don't believe my word, listen to the recruiters and headhunters whose day-to-day job is to find candidates, and hear what they have to say in regards to that. So I hope that this session has helped you all. Again, as usual, I always want to know what people's biggest takeaway is from these sessions. So far, no questions have popped in, but if you do have any questions, I'll be hanging on. Happy to answer them. Just very briefly, as I do at the end, how you can work with Woodburn Accountants and Advisors and myself is we provide all forms of services that are administrative in China. We don't do recruitment. We only do recruitment for finance when our clients are trying to build in-house finance teams, mainly because I do have a pool of candidates available because I recruit for myself. But that's the only form of recruitment that we do. But otherwise, we do all administrative functions in relation to our clients' companies in China, and making sure that they remain in compliance. That's the basic foundation you have to maintain. I just want to mention one quote that Garrett wrote as his takeaway, which is, don't underestimate the efforts you have to make. I love that. People think that they can come to China and everything is easy and simple because that's how the media portrays it. You just don't. It's so much hard work, and you need the right people who are going to support you on that. If you are interested in learning more about employing talent in China, you can reach out to me. Happy to have a one-to-one discussion. My email is Kristina@woodburnglobal.com. Or if you're interested in understanding more about our services, again, just email me for that. Our last two sessions are around something that is very important in the minds of people. It's individual and corporate risks, as well as fraud and how to avoid fraud. So if you're watching this live, you're already subscribed to our sessions. So you can just click on the same link you did and come next Wednesday. For those of you that you're new to this, you can always subscribe and join us as well, or watch the recordings. So again, no questions have popped in, so I'm going to leave you all there, and I wish you a fantastic afternoon, great remainder of the week. Take care, and goodbye.